reprise du débat. The honourable member for Carleton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Once upon a time, an angry dog chased a cat, and the cat ran up to the top of the tree. And so the cat lived happily ever thereafter. Right? Well, wrong, because of course the cat had to come down the tree at some point, and the dog was still waiting there. We're kind of in the same situation as Dr. Fisman, an epidemiologist from whom I borrowed that analogy, explained. We're all safely in our homes, away from the COVID dog. But at some point, we will have to come out into the world if we're going to earn a living and pay our bills. That is ultimately the problem with which we will be faced in the medium term. Today we are debating measures, for example, that are at once too exorbitant and too inadequate. And how is that possible? Well, they are too exorbitant because they will drive our deficit to at least $186 billion this year, almost 4 times the previous record. That's only to pay for measures that take us to the end of the summer, barely a fiscal quarter into the year. Doesn't include provincial deficits or the reduction in the book value of the Canada Pension Plan investments, which surely will have dropped given that markets are down by 1/3 since the crisis began. And that's why I'll be sharing my time with the member for Kelowna, who will comment on some solutions to that problem. And he will also bring concerns from Central Okanagan. As I was saying, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the members of all the House for their help, the reality is that we cannot, as a nation, in fact, no nation can go on borrowing this much this fast. We know this for a fact because already we cannot borrow enough on international markets. The Bank of Canada has announced that it's going to print $5 billion a week, an annual $250 billion a year for almost the exclusive purposes of lending to governments. In other words, we are beginning to pay our bills with money that the Bank of Canada is literally fashioning out of thin air. That can only go on for so long as necessary, as these very legitimate measures, in fact, are. At the same time, as big as they are, they're still not solving all of the problems. For example, there are businesses who will benefit from none of these proposals. For example, if you've got a payroll over $1 million, you can't get this $40,000 emergency loan. If your business is shut down by the government, it doesn't matter that you have a wage subsidy, there's no work and therefore no wages to pay. In other words, you're still paying your mortgage, your property taxes, your utilities, etc. But none of the $76 billion in measures for businesses will affect you whatsoever. I know one such businessman came here penniless as an immigrant from Italy 50 years ago and built a great business. At the beginning of March, he dropped off $800,000 worth of food that he distributes to restaurants. At the end of March, guess what happened? Those restaurants said, we can't pay you for any of your food because we're closed. In fact, much of it went bad. Well, he's not eligible for any of the benefits so far. This is his life savings gone. No matter how much government spends, it cannot replace that. I'm not saying that to disparage the measures before the House. There is nothing that can replace the extraordinary power of our 20 million Canadian workers. There is no government program that can rain down enough money to compensate for their demobilization. There is nothing that can replace the entrepreneur that goes with heart and soul into their business every single day to employ their workers and serve their customers. No government program will ever replace any of that. So we're still the cat at the top of the tree. And it's true, we have to hide there because there is this dog at the bottom of the tree waiting for us when we get down. But we do need a plan to get down. Now, health experts tell us that the only way to get rid of the COVID dog is to have a vaccination or a cure, but that might not happen for as long as a year and a half. I've already explained that we're going to go $186 billion into deficit simply to respond in 1/4 of 1 year. You can do the math. This cannot go on, at least in its current state, for that length of time. So we need an interim plan to get out of the tree safely and back to life so we can resupply our economy and can produce the wealth that we continue to consume. So what is that interim plan? Well, we can only study those places that have found ways to make it work. So far, the exemplary cases are South Korea and Taiwan. And what have they done? Well, in South Korea, they've begun very well-targeted testing to find out who is susceptible to who's actually contracted the disease and therefore spreading it. And once those people are identified, they are quickly isolated and treated. Here in Canada, we've tested about 1% of the Canadian population in 6 weeks. That is far too slow. The good news is that an Ottawa company, Spartan Biotech, is now signing agreements with governments at all levels, including the federal government, to the government's credit, in order to provide a coffee cup size box which can conduct a test every half hour. Dr. Paul Lem, the genius CEO of this company, has now signed an agreement to sell over 800,000 of these devices to the government of Ontario. Each device can do 15 tests a day. That means that almost every single Ontarian could be tested once a day with this technology. Some employers in Taiwan, for example, are testing people as they come in every couple of days so they can quickly take people out of the workforce if they are identified as having COVID-19. This kind of technology could provide us with the same nimble ability to identify the sick and take them out of circulation so they do not transmit. We can also prioritize the workers in hospitals and seniors' homes so that anybody who, or not just the workers, but anybody who goes into these facilities is instantly tested and given a result within 30 minutes. Now, I know how important this is. I was tested for COVID-19. It took 12 days for the results to get back, Mr. Speaker. And when they did, I had a false positive. I had to call and speak to 5 different people at the hospital to find out whether or not I had contracted it. That is clearly too slow and too clumsy. There's no way that we can broadly test our population unless the system speeds up. And Spartan Biotech has the technology that they are deploying at rapid speed with companies right across this country helping with the manufacturing of it. That will be absolutely necessary. We'll need to slowly ramp up industries where human interaction is more rare, where surfaces that are less likely to be infected, and where anybody who comes in regular contact with others around them is regularly tested so that they do not become a host transmitter from one person to another. These plans need to be in development stage right now. We also need to signal to Health Canada the need to approve treatments, testing, and potentially vaccines and cures much more quickly than normal. There are far too many stories of treatments for children's cancer, for example, that are available south of the border but not here in Canada because Health Canada has been too slow. That kind of bureaucratic delay is, at most times, tragic and now intolerable. We must clear the way for new innovations and new solutions to hit the marketplace and deliver benefits to people so that we can tackle this urgent and unprecedented problem. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we will need a new and more competitive approach to finding a vaccine. Senior U.S. authorities testified before Congress that finding such a vaccine might take 18 months to deploy. There's no way we can wait that long. Our economies will collapse and too many people will die in the meantime. We need to break free from our traditional models of R&D and unleash the power of competition in order to put all of the best minds in pharmaceutical industry and science to work on solving this urgent problem. Then and only then can we stop this disease and free ourselves from the captivity that has ground our economies to a halt and led to so much human tragedy. That is the approach that will allow us to overcome the situation in which we now find ourselves. And I, along with all members of Her Majesty's loyal opposition, under the leadership of our capable leader, offer ourselves to the government and to the nation in helping to bring about that solution. Thank you very much.